It's time now for Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Kyle Benedict as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives in Yavapai County. And now here's today's Countywide.
Welcome to Countywide. I'm Paul David. Great to have you in studio with us today. Sergeant G.R. Monero with the Department of Public Safety is in studio once again. If you remember earlier this year, we did a great show with him about heroin. It was wonderful. We actually got quite a few comments on that show. People were really... I think that was one of the mystery drugs that we hadn't covered too much on. Right. You know? And so this week we're going to cover two more drugs. The first one we're going to talk about methamphetamine, which we've talked about before, but I don't know, GR, when you come in, you bring the samples and the visuals, and I think that really helps folks understand.
Just get an understanding on what small amounts we're talking about, but street values are really high, and you know how much a little bit of meth can go a long way, and why it's fueled locally, and the profit margin for it.
So let's start out with just the basics in case folks don't know and they've heard it recently, but what is methamphetamine?
Methamphetamine is a chemical compound that the derivative is pseudoephedrine or ephedrine. Okay. I mean, we're all from Arizona. We all have allergies. If you haven't noticed, it's very difficult to get cold or allergy medication.
I don't have allergies.
Oh, you're the one.
I'm the lucky one, yeah. So but that stuff is now behind the counter.
It's either behind the counter, or you have to show identification or check with the pharmacist. You can only buy up to 3 boxes at a time, whereas you used to be able to go to Costco and you could buy a case of it.
And that was where the problem lied?
That was where a big problem lied, because that's a main ingredient in methamphetamine. Okay. Now it's more difficult to get, and it has reduced some of the meth labs, but that is one of the main ingredients.
What does it do?
That actually dries up your sinuses. Okay. That's what it's used for, but it's a stimulant. It's a mild stimulant, but once you mix it with some other chemicals such as red phosphorus and iodine crystals, and you cook that conglomeration, it will turn into methamphetamine.
Wow. And then so how are we, and well, let's before we go, how we use it, we now, like you said, we can't just go to the store and buy it in bulk. No. I remember there was a time when there was talk, and I think it actually happened, where there was a book. If you wanted so much, you had to sign your name in a book?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that's still the way it is. If you want to possess more than, I believe it's 24 grams of pseudoephedrine, cold medication or allergy medication, you have to sign a book, excuse me, and it goes down to HIDA, which monitors all that and tracks all those purchases.
Okay, so it's not you. You don't go through go to the drugstore and say, okay, who's been getting a whole bunch of this?
We can. It's open to law enforcement, but HIDA tracks it down in Phoenix.
What's HIDA?
It's a high-intensity drug trafficking area. Okay. It's a federal program. It's usually a task force involving lots of state and federal agencies. They do a lot of the drug trafficking statistics, especially along the border. Arizona is a HIDA state because we are against the border, so they track all the stats for us.
Has it paid off?
It has.
Has it?
Our meth labs, when I first started working narcotics in 95, 95 through 97, we were averaging about 100 to 120 meth labs a year in Yavapai County.
Really? Labs? Now, you're not talking about users or sellers. You're talking about labs.
Labs.
Oh, those are extremely dangerous, too.
They are extremely dangerous. And then the federal government came in and they mandated reporting on the pseudoephedrine. They limited the amount of iodine crystals. You used to be able to go to a feed store or a tack and feed store, which these crystals are used legitimately by horse people, but they'll buy 1 2-ounce bottle and it'll last them a year or two. But we had people going in there buying 7, 8 cases at a time.
Ooh.
That's now regulated. Anything more than 2 ounces is a 21-day waiting period, so HIDA can check you out. And then there used to be a chemical company in Albuquerque. You could just call them up with a credit card number, and they'd send you 5 pounds of red phosphorus.
Just the stuff you're talking about scares me.
I
wouldn't put any one of these things in me in large quantity.
No, and they're mixing them together. And when they mix these things together and cook them, they're making phosgene and phosphine gases, which are both extremely fatal. By the time you ingest them, it's too late. You're already dead. By the time
they're wearing respirators?
Absolutely not.
Oh, they're not. Okay.
No, where chemists cook in a big hooded lab, the people who cook methamphetamine, they're doing it on stoves, they're doing it out in the forest, they're doing it wherever they can.
Okay.
They're not using, high quality Pyrex jars. They're using iced tea jugs and plastic water bottles and gas cans. So it's a very volatile and dangerous situation.
Wow.
Since a lot of these chemicals are regulated now, what we're seeing is there's a new method. It's called a one-pot method, where they still need the pseudoephedrine tablets, but instead of the iodine and the red phosphorus, they need lithium or sodium metal, which is from rechargeable batteries.
Okay.
And anhydrous ammonia, which, being in Arizona, if you've ever driven by the cotton fields down in Buckeye or down in Yuma, you see they look like propane tanks on wheels.
Okay.
Those are anhydrous ammonia tanks.
Oh.
And what that's used for is fertilizer. When they irrigate the fields, they put that into the water, and that anhydrous ammonia helps fertilize the crops. It's also it can be used for explosives too. But
And people are pumping this into themselves?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
That is crazy. Now, do we have, you mentioned a large number of meth labs there. We used to.
We did.
But this crackdown has obviously helped.
Yeah, for a number of
Right.
years, we had no meth labs in Yavapai County. None reported, none located. I think in the last 2 years, talking with some of the pant guys, there's been one or two, but they've been these small one-pot meth labs where they're shaking it up with the sodium metal and the anhydrous ammonia, and they're making small amounts. Where the labs we were finding in the 90s and early 2000s, they were making up to pounds of meth at a time.
My wife was saying something about a shake and bake.
Yeah, that's the one-pot method.
That's the one-pot method. Okay,
Yeah.
she was reading something about that was like a shake and bake, just a quick way of making meth.
Yeah, and if you had just a water bottle, just like we all drink on a hot summer day, if you add the pseudoephedrine, you add the sodium metal, and it has to be the batteries. You have to peel them apart and get that sodium metal out of them.
God.
Cut that up, and they have to be fresh batteries. They have to have the charge.
Of course.
Oh, yeah.
Freshness is important.
Yeah.
When it comes to batteries.
And then you add anhydrous ammonia. You just shake that up, and then it will produce methamphetamine.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I think maybe we'll take a break.
Okay.
We'll take a break. Let's take our quick break. Sergeant G.R. Monero with the Department of Public Safety is in studio today. I'm Paul David. This is Countywide Talk. We're talking about methamphetamine. Stick around. We'll be right back.
A single ember from a wildfire can travel over a mile. You can't control where it will land, only what happens before it does. Visit fireadapted.org to learn how to protect your community from wildfires.
Up, college is hard. Down, those books are heavy.
My sport is football, but my passion is education. So every year I take promising high schoolers on a college tour to show them that higher education means a brighter future.
My name is Nnamdi Asamoah. I don't just wear the shirt, I live it.
You can be a reader, tutor, or mentor too. Take the pledge at liveunited.org/volunteer.
Do you wear this?
Cook foods to the right temperature using a food thermometer. 3,000 Americans will die from food poisoning this year. Keep your family safer. Check your steps at foodsafety.gov.
A single ember from a wildfire can travel over a mile. You can't control where it will land, only what happens before it does. Visit fireadapted.org to learn how to protect your community from wildfires.
Congrats on paying off all those student loans.
Finally, right?
I'm kind of living paycheck to paycheck right now.
Well, have you tried saving?
Bill collectors, they're the worst. Am I right?
When it comes to financial stability, don't get left behind. Get tools and tips for saving at feedthepig.org.
Welcome back to Countywide. Department of Public Safety Sergeant G.R. Monero in studio today. We're talking about methamphetamine, and we got kind of through what it's made out of, and that should be scary enough. I mean, I've heard of road flares,
Right.
liquid Drano.
Yes. Yeah.
And these are like things you're supposed to look piled up, I guess, by the trash and stuff, and maybe that's a possibility that's being made in the neighborhood. But
right, and when you make meth, what they say is if you make 1 pound of meth, you produce 7 to 10 pounds of toxic waste.
Oh, where's that going?
Being
Typically
dumped in our sewer systems, dumped out in the forest, going into the water table. We've had instances where the Forest Service has come across just swaths of dead trees, and we'll find that somebody's been dumping chemicals out in the forest. Yeah.
So this stuff is extremely dangerous. I mean, are we talking like if I had something like that next door in my house, the house next door to me, what kind of concerns would I have?
Well, you have
explosions.
The first concern is explosions.
Okay.
The second concern is the toxicity of the chemicals, just the fumes. It's awful stuff. When we go into a meth lab, I mean, we're wearing self-contained breathing apparatus. We're wearing the bunny suits and booties and gloves, and until the air quality is sustainable for life, that's how we stay in meth labs.
What am I smelling? If I'm a neighbor or driving past a house, what kind of smell am I going to smell?
It really depends on what chemicals they're using.
Okay.
When they mix the main chemicals together, it will eventually make meth, but it takes a long time. So they start adding solvents to it. Acetone, gasoline, Coleman fuel, naphtha. And depending on what chemical they're using, I've heard it described as a dirty sock or a cat urine type smell. To me, it smells just like my wife's nail polish remover.
Okay.
Just that acetone, very chemical smell. That's what it smells like when it's being manufactured. And then once they get the liquid form of methamphetamine, it'll look like, you know, we've all been to the restaurants where you've got the two-phase liquid, the oil and vinegar before you shake it up.
Okay.
For the salad oil. That's kind of what this looks like, except one looks like, you know, sludge and the other one's kind of a clear liquid. Depending on which chemicals you use, the meth is suspended in that. So they have to extract that liquid form. And it's very acidic and it can't be taken into the body. So that's when they start adding either the Drano or the Red Double I.
But Drano we can't put in our body.
The people are putting it in their body every day.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But you certainly can't go to the store and pick up a jug of Drano and drink it.
No.
But we can put it in meth and take it that way.
Right, and what they do is, you know, it's so acidic, and lye and Drano are very basic chemicals, very caustic. So they'll just start mixing it in little by little until they get this product, which is a water-soluble methamphetamine-based product.
Wow. Okay, you brought some, so I'm going to hold this up while we're talking about it. Kind of give me an idea as to what we're looking at here in terms of meth. I guess start, of course, up here.
Yeah, the top two are actually the crystal, what we're seeing a lot on the street. When I first started working dope in the 90s, it was very powdery, different colors depending on the color pills that they were using.
Okay.
And then in the late 2000s, it really switched to the clear crystals, shards looking. And
that's exactly what they look like, too.
Right, and that's people like that on the street because they believe it's a more pure form of methamphetamine.
Because it's got some clarity to it?
Yes.
Okay.
And it really doesn't. There's really no difference in that in the powder that we were seeing. It just, this looks a little cleaner. Those top two are 7.6 grams of meth in each one of those bags. On the street, that goes for about $750 a piece.
Amazing.
For each one of those bags. And then the smaller one's 1.5 grams, and that's about $150 out on the street.
Now, if I'm a user, how much of this am I using? How long is this going to last me?
If you're a user, and it depends on your use, because meth's one of those chemicals, once you start taking it, to chase that high, you have to use more and more and more. There's people who will use 7 grams a day.
Wow.
Yes.
So you've got to have some serious cash to be able to have this kind of habit.
Absolutely.
But that's where we wind up running into our crimes and stuff, because eventually every meth story I've heard is all of a sudden you lose your ability to work.
Right.
Family's gone, home's gone, and next thing you know, we've got a bunch of burglaries and stuff taking place. It seems that way.
Right.
Yeah.
And one of the big associated crimes that we've seen with meth use is the identity theft. That was huge in the 90s and early 2000s. People going and stealing other people's mail. It was real easy back then. I mean, we all got about 58 credit card applications a day in our mailbox.
I guess so.
And people were just going and stealing those, filling them out, saying, oh, by the way, I changed my address, so send me the credit card to this address. We actually had an incident where an officer went to go buy a new truck as he was getting ready to retire, and his credit was shot because there was 5 credit cards in his name he didn't know about. Somebody had stolen his mail.
Oh.
So
there's something to think about.
Yeah. So a lot of the credit card companies don't send those out anymore. So that's helped a lot. But a lot of that identity theft and credit card fraud was occurring because of the meth use.
How long would it take to make 7.6 grams of that?
If you're going to do the one pot method, you'd probably have to do it in 1 or 2 batches because they're such small cooks. But 2 to 4 hours.
Oh, that's it. 2 to 4.
It.
So this is not a process that takes days to accomplish.
No.
No. Okay. So I can make quite a bit pretty fast.
Right. As long as you have the chemicals, and that's kind of the hard part with a lot of the local labs.
That was the goal, huh?
Yeah, they have what they call Smurfs, or people who go out smurfing.
Oh.
And they're usually meth users who will go to the different drugstores or pharmacies or grocery stores, and they'll buy or steal as much pseudoephedrine as they can during a day, and then they'll go deliver that to the meth lab.
That's their job.
That's their job, and in return they get usable meth out of it. So.
Do we still have a lot of meth labs in the county? I know you mentioned.
I think we have some, and they're usually the small one-pot methods. Like I said, I think there's been 2 this year of the smaller variety when I was talking to Sergeant Gregory at Pant. But it's not like it was. We were doing 2 or 3 a week back in the early late 90s and 2000s.
So when you guys show up, you can't just storm in there. Do you storm in there? I mean,
no. If we know that there's a meth lab,
yeah, let's say,
and we have a pretty good idea there's a meth lab. There's 2 SWAT teams in the state that are meth lab certified. Well, maybe 3. I think Prescott Valley is still certified as a meth lab unit, and we call those SWAT teams, and they go in with all their SWAT gear plus the breathing apparatus just to make sure it's safe.
You brought some packaging with you too.
Yep.
I don't know if they can see this, but there's we got 8 balls on here, unicorns here, lips, Superman's emblem, which I'm sure he would not want people doing this. Just a clear bag and a blue bag. But why the fancy packaging?
Well, when I started working dope, meth was packaged in little paper envelopes. They'd use shiny paper.
Okay.
They would cut them. You know, they're meth's a stimulant, so they'd be up 24 hours a day, so they could cut these envelopes. Well. These are used legitimately for coin collectors, stamp collectors, people who make jewelry, that they will store their items. And meth users and dealers have just taken a fancy to them. You can buy about 500 of these little bags for $5 to $10. Easy to package up, weigh your meth, put it in the bags, and you can see how small they are. You can carry several of those in your pocket for sale without, being detected.
What's a typical meth lab house look like?
There's all kinds of varieties. I mean, we've seen them where you drive by and you go, there's probably a meth lab there, all the way up to $1 million homes. We've found them in $1 million homes, yeah. Okay,
so I guess this drug affects everybody then.
It does. And meth's one of those drugs that it jumps every socioeconomic, ethnic group that you can imagine.
Well, I can handle a GR. I'll be fine. I can handle meth. I can take as much as I want and I'm okay. Do you guys hear that story?
We used to hear that a lot, and now really what we hear is one of the first questions I ask people that we've arrested is, when did you become addicted to meth? And most common answer is the first time I used it.
That's scary.
Yeah.
That's pretty powerful.
Yeah, they just, because it acts like adrenaline in the system. We've all had that fight or flight syndrome where, something jumps out or, bad drivers cut us off, and certain things happen to the body when that occurs. All the blood from our extremities goes into our main organs. Our eyes get dilated and we get tunnel vision because we're looking at what's in front of us. Heart rate accelerates because we're trying to decide, are we going to fight this thing in front of us or are we going to turn and get the heck out of there? That's what meth does. But adrenaline, after about 20 seconds, we're like, okay, we calm down,
Right.
We say something under our breath about the driver in front of us and we move on. Meth lasts in the body 8 to 12 hours, you have that feeling.
Oh, wow.
You almost feel invincible while the time you're on meth.
Well, and after a while, you're having to take more and more and more and more just to keep that.
Exactly.
Keep that out there? Okay.
And what we do find with meth users and interviewing them is that first high, they just feel incredible. They're just almost euphoric, and I've talked to high school kids or housewives or construction workers. It doesn't matter, but it's always the same story. I got my homework done. I got my job done. I got to go hang out with my friends. I just felt like I had all this energy. And once they get, start to come down, they don't come back down to normal. For every reaction, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So they start coming down. They start feeling terrible, lack of energy. How do they counteract that? They use meth again. So they just go on this cycle.
And it's an ugly
4
one.
days at a time.
Yeah. DPS Sergeant G.R. Manera is in studio today. We're talking about methamphetamine. This is Countywide. We'll be back in just a couple minutes.
Time to wake up. I've got a job to do today.
I've got a job to do today.
Don't forget, you've got a job to do today.
Hey, Mom. I got the job. Thanks.
Got the job. Welcome aboard.
Have a good first day at work, Mom.
Your donations to Goodwill fund job training programs right in your community.
Feels good to start fresh, right?
Sure does. And like that, you're a job creator.
Here's your check. Oh, you got it. You know, since I got rid of my car, I really enjoy walking.
Okay. Got it.
But getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates.
Oh, you're home early.
You live with your mom?
That'll set your game back a few years. Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
When you throw away money on wasted electricity, you're throwing away everything you could have bought with it. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov.
Welcome back to Countywide. We've got a couple minutes left in the program. DPS Sergeant G.R. Manera in studio today. We've been talking about methamphetamine. Hopefully it's been informative for you. Like I said earlier this year, he talked heroin. This time it's meth. Anything I should be looking for in my kids maybe, or loved ones, spouses, relatives that may be addicted to this stuff?
There's a lot of telltale signs with meth, especially long-term use. When people use meth, they don't eat and take care of themselves because the meth gives them the energy, so they'll start to lose weight, typically. They kind of have a drawn in, their skin turns a little bit gray. They may start to get a lot of open sores.
What is the open sore thing all about? Because I'm confused. I hear some people say, oh, they're just sitting there itching themselves.
Well, that's how they get infected, but the open sores themselves are a result of these chemicals. You know, when we eat or drink something, we have the natural plumbing to get rid of that. But when we start putting this stuff into our system doesn't know how to evacuate it, how to get rid of it. So the two main places that these chemicals exit the body are through the roof of the mouth and through the skin.
Oh, that's gross.
And that's where, you know, you get these toxic chemicals coming out in the skin, they start causing sores. That's why a lot of the teeth are rotted on meth users, is because that's where all the chemicals come out.
Oh, boy.
Plus they're smoking it or injecting it, so those chemicals are really powerful. Excuse me, powerful and strong when they come out. So that's where we get a lot of the teeth rotting. We do get the open sores, and they do start digging at them and scratching them, and that's when they're very obvious. But those are some of the telltale signs. You want to look for, most meth users now will smoke meth, and here's some of the glass pipes that you'll see. It has to be a glass pipe, and it has to be a more intense heat.
Why?
Because this doesn't burn like tobacco or marijuana would. It basically vaporizes with a real intense heat, and that's what's taken into the lungs. Syringes, the small bindles or the bags, those are the things you want to look for when you're looking around with your kids or things like that.
If it's in your house. Yeah, I guess kids not necessarily, but loved ones, anybody that you know might be doing this. Yeah. I know I ran into a guy that I hadn't seen in several years, and he came up to me, and I could just totally tell he was on meth. He had lost about, I want to say, 60 pounds. Most of his teeth were gone, and he was looking gray-green. So, yeah, it's a nasty thing. GR Manera, thank you so much for coming in. That's today's Countywide. I'm Paul David, and we will talk to you again next time.